A warmer from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Soups with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got a great podcast for you. In segment number 2, we're going to be chatting with one of our good friends, Curtis Rogers, who does such great work over at 710 Seattle Sports. We're going to be chatting with them a lot of what we're seeing out here on the West Coast. We've got Grand Canyon heading on over to the Mountain West. What does that mean for the Mountain West? What are expectations for both Grand Canyon and the rest of the teams out there in that fine conference? And we're also going to be chatting about a little bit of Big Ten. He is out there in the great state of Washington. He's out there specifically in Seattle, so we have to ask about the Washington Huskies. What's the lay of the land there? We're going to ask a little bit about Gonzaga as well, so we're going to have a great chat on that front. Here in segment number 1, we did see some news in college basketball on Saturday. Tahaad Pettiford, he's a guy that I thought was going to be one of the SEC Players of the Year. He got arrested for a DUI. We'll be taking a look at the situation as currently there is no suspension or anything that has been handed out as of the time of recording, but do want to just break this down a little bit, and we shall see what is going to be happening on that front. We haven't gotten a lot of college basketball news here in the last few weeks, so we do have something to talk about. Not necessarily what you want to be talking about, but it is something that is certainly worth discussing here, as it is going to be making a little bit of an impact. And if you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letter CM, name does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And while I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, everything is powered by EdgeBoost. Over at EdgeBoost, they're making sure that bettors are able to access their funds anywhere, in any location, for all of their gambling-related transactions. You earn cashback rewards as you use EdgeBoost, and when you go to edgeboost.bet, put in that promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. That'll get you a $1 match on your first deposit of up to $25. And we do have to break down what we've got with Auburn right now, with Pettiford obviously being someone that is the subject of an investigation. I think that that's probably the proper terms for it, as he did pick up a DUI. It looked like really early Saturday morning. It might have been super duper late Friday night. The specifics in this case, I don't think they're overly meaningful, but with that said, for Pettiford, rock solid player last year as a freshman, 11.5 points per game. He was shooting about 36.5% from 3, was able to dole it out with 3 assists per contest, and he was, in many people's eyes, probably going to be a late first, early second round pick in the NBA draft. Decides to come back to school, and I thought that Auburn was going to be taking a setback to start with, because now you're going to be probably looking at, in the backcourt, maybe Abdul Bashir to give you a bit of something at the wing spot. You really don't have a lot of facilitation outside of Pettiford. You've got a freshman in Caden Magwood, who's going to be able to give you a bit of something. Maybe Kevin Overton steps up, but this is going to be rough for Auburn for how long he's going to be suspended, and that is the big question here, because we recall that there was a similar situation with Mark Few a few years ago for Gonzaga. Obviously, that's a coach. This is a player, and I do not think that Pettiford is 21 years old, so that's a little bit of something to throw in there as well. But that said, he was suspended for like 2 exhibition games, and then they suspended him for the first game of the season. They were playing against some team that they were like a 30-plus point favorite against, so it really didn't mean much. It's going to be interesting to see where Auburn is going to be landing on this, and I will go no further than to say this. I know that there are varying opinions about drinking and driving and everything like that. Some people view it as the worst thing ever. Some people view it as something that's not a big deal because maybe they do it themselves. I will always say, before you drive, make sure that you think about the consequences, and if you are able to, if at all possible, always get someone to drive you yourself. I would say never get behind the wheel if you've been drinking. Like, I enjoy myself some good beer reviews myself. I always make sure that I've got Uber, Lyft, a buddy system in place, something like that. So I do encourage you guys to do that. I know that this is a gambling podcast and what have you, but I do think that we need to take a few seconds of humanity here. But that said, with regards to the suspension, it's a very big TBD. Like, there are some places that they might give you like 10 games for this. There are some places that, again, I brought up the Gonzaga situation. That was only 3 games, and 2 of them were exhibition games. So, it's very much TBD here. But Auburn, for as long as Pettiford is going to be off the floor, that's going to be rough. Even with having someone like Keshawn Hall, who comes on over after he was oh so versatile at both George Mason and Central Florida, and at 6'7", he can actually handle the ball a little bit as well. This is going to put them in a little bit of a sticky situation, and certainly something that I'll be monitoring over the coming days and the coming weeks. Probably will try to get on one of my good friends, Blake Lovell, to break this down a little bit as well. He does great work over at Southeastern 16. So just a little bit of news there in college basketball that we saw on Saturday. Now I'll chat with our good friend Curtis Rogers, who does such amazing work over at 710 Seattle Sports. Take a look at some Big Ten, take a look at the Mountain West and Gonzaga basketball on the flip side here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Beats and Family Podcast.
Greg, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, love talking college basketball any time of the year, but especially in the off season where, look, things do quiet down a little bit, but we've seen some movement. We've seen a lot of stuff happen over the last couple of weeks. Always good to talk about it. And look, I mean, there's just been so much movement in the portal and all that. It's going to be a lot of fun this college basketball season. It's crazy that we're still, a few months away from it, but I'm ready to go. I'm ready for the season to start.
Oh, I'm ready for it as well, and I am very ready to be seeing what we're going to get in the Mountain West this season, because that's a conference that you and I both love. It's a conference that, it's had its ups and its downs over the last few years, but now they're going to have Grand Canyon in there for this year. Grand Canyon was going to be transitioning on over to the WCC. The WAC just decided, no thanks, we no longer want you in the conference, and now here they are in the Mountain West. And how do you take a look at both they and the conference as a whole, as I think that this is going to be a lot of fun for this upcoming season?
Yeah, and especially considering the schools that they're going to be losing to the new Pac-12 the following academic season, I think Grand Canyon is a tremendous addition for the Mountain West, especially considering, what is available on the West Coast. They're pretty much the only school that was open for business, and probably not necessarily to the level of the schools that were going to be reached out to by the Pac-12, especially after the addition of Texas State, which gives them 9 now, pretty much fortifying that conference. So the Mountain West kind of left in this in-between of, do we move forward with what we've got, or do we go out and get another school that could be available? And Grand Canyon, as we know, has one of the best home court advantages in all of college basketball, and they've got a lot of recent success, too. Bryce Drew has really done a fantastic job with the Lopes making the NCAA tournament the last 2 years. Did get blown out by Maryland in the first round this last year, but hey, pair of NCAA tournament berths, that's nothing to sneeze at for sure. I do kind of wonder what they're going to be like against I would say a better quality conference, the Mountain West, in terms of opponent compared to the WAC. It's obviously a much deeper conference than what the WAC offers, but I think this is a good move by Grand Canyon, and I think this is a good move by the Mountain West Conference, especially considering just the glut of schools that they're going to be losing here. Colorado State, Boise State, Fresno State, a lot of name-brand schools, at least out here on the West Coast. You got to find a way to replenish that, and I think Grand Canyon is a pretty good one to bring into your conference.
Oh, I'm right there with you. I think that this is going to be amazing for the conference as a whole, and I think that the Mountain West in general is going to be a very intriguing conference, because when it comes to this Mountain West Conference, you had a lot of coaching changes. New Mexico was one of those rock-solid teams. I like the fact that they hire on Eric Olin, but that's going to be a different team. UNLV, I think, really upgraded. I do like the fact that they bring in Josh Passer. They've fallen on some tough times. That was something that I felt like they needed, and I do think that that's going to be able to help them out. And with the Mountain West, I don't know if there's really that clear creme de la creme team, unless if it's San Diego State with Magoon Gwath, but we don't know if he's going to be all set to go towards the beginning part of the season. And it does feel like a Mountain West that it's going to be up for grabs, and we could see one team make it in the NCAA tournament, but if they play their cards right like they have the last few years, we could see 3 or 4.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder, too, if the departing teams are going to get a little bit extra on the road in terms of student sections giving them a lot of noise in those environments.
I will say that's more than half the conference, though.
For sure. Absolutely.
It might be departing team versus departing team. Hey, you too.
We're all leaving together. I think San Diego State, obviously, they have been the best run program in the Mountain West over the last decade plus, going from Steve Fisher to Ryan Dutcher. I mean, until they get knocked off as the top dog, really kind of in that conference, I think they have a lot going right for them. You mentioned Magoon Gwath, also Miles Bird as well. They bring in some good transfers. I think that's going to be a really fun team to watch out west. How about Utah State and what they do year in and year out? They didn't lose their head coach this year. Unbelievable. And yet, I think they're still going to be in the running for an NCAA tournament berth. They're always competitive. I really like what they do year in and year out. It just kind of speaks to kind of the quality of that program, how their head coach normally wins Mountain West Conference Coach of the Year, departs for somewhere else, and they bring in somebody else else new. You mentioned Josh Pastner's hire in UNLV. He's a big energy guy. He is a guy that brings a lot of eyes to a program wherever he goes, whether it be at Memphis or Georgia Tech. And now he's at UNLV. I really like what that hire could potentially do to UNLV. I know they had the success that they had in the late 80s and the early 90s, but really since then, it has kind of felt like they're maybe a sleeping giant in a way out west. Hopefully Josh Pastner can be the guy to kind of reinvigorate that fan base, make the Thomas and Mack Center a really tough place to play for a lot of opponents. And, you look at Boise State as well. They've had a lot of good success, too, over the last decade. Leon Rice has really built a really special program out there in Boise, especially because they really had not had much, basketball success prior to him showing up there. So right now, the Mountain West could definitely be a multi-bid league for sure in the upcoming NCAA tournament. I don't know how much more than maybe 3 teams or so get one of those bids handed out by the selection committee, but I think it should be a pretty interesting season. And, oh, by the way, can't forget Ali Farokhmanesh, March Madness hero for Northern Iowa all those years ago. He takes over that Colorado State program for Nico Medved, gets promoted from an assistant coaching job to the head coaching job. Really intrigued by that hire for sure.
Yep, I mean, it's going to be so intriguing to see what we get out of Colorado State. Anyone that's a hater of Kansas, you should be feeling very good about Colorado State this upcoming season. As Curtis Rogers, he does amazing work over at 710 Seattle Sports, gauging a little bit of everything. He's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And for Grand Canyon, it's obviously been a long and winding road because before everything happened over the last few weeks, the big news was that they were going to be joining the WCC. And I mean, we've got Seattle that's going to be joining that conference for this next year, and Gonzaga, they're going to be departing after this year. And how do you take a look at Gonzaga for this upcoming year? Because with Gonzaga, they didn't add a ton in the transfer portal. They added a few rock-solid pieces, but it just felt like things never really meshed for them last season, even though they had so much returning talent. And I think that it's going to be very fascinating to see what happens this year, where it feels like the expectations are a little bit lower, but oftentimes Gonzaga, I feel like, does some of their best work when the expectations are lower.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point you bring up because there have been a couple of seasons where they've flown under the radar a little bit. I think back 2 years ago when they made it all the way to the Sweet 16. And last year, definitely a disappointing year, especially after the start that they got off to, where they blew out Baylor in the season's opener. And everybody kind of thought, oh, my gosh, this Zags team could be one of the best we've ever seen, especially considering the talent that they brought back from a year ago. It is a different feel with this Zags team for sure. You do have a couple of transfers that have made some noise in their college careers. Adam Miller, who's been at Illinois, who's been at ASU, and then Tyon Grant Foster from Grand Canyon. Those two guys added to this Zags team. But Zags has been a team that has been really good about continuity. They've been really good about finding guys that you can build around for 2, 3, even 4 years over the course of the last 5 or so years since the transfer portal really got going. They are still a threat to absolutely win the WCC this season. It would be stunning if they are not in, the WCC championship game by the end of the season. They do lose Ryan Nemhard. They've lost, all sorts of guys, Ben Gregg as well. It has been name after name that has exited that program over the last 3 or 4 years. Really a run of talent that we have not seen even Gonzaga produce in the past, which is crazy to think because they've put so many guys in the league, but it has not been to this level. Jalen Suggs and Chet Holmgren, those guys have already signed their rookie extensions in the NBA. So I think this Gonzaga team, with what they're bringing back and what they have added to it, there's no Nemhard this season, but I still think they are going to be right there with St. Mary's, right there with all the other teams in the WCC. It is going to be a pretty classic Gonzaga season in terms of wins and losses. I don't think their NCAA tournament streak of bursts is in danger this season. And now there have been a couple of instances the last couple of years where that may have been the case. You think back to Gonzaga 2 years ago, really needing that win at Kentucky. They pick it up. Last year, really basically kind of needing to win the conference tournament. Hey, I think the Zags, as long as Mark Few is there, as long as they've got, just one of the most consistently well-run programs in the country, I think they're absolutely going to be a threat no matter who they are playing against. And I think, even when they move into the Pac-12, next year with a lot of those former Mountain West teams, Washington State, Oregon State, you bring those teams over, I think they're still going to have a tremendous run out west.
Yep, I think so as well. And with this Gonzaga Bulldogs team. Going to be very interesting to see what happens after this year, but in terms of this year, I think that they're going to be rock solid out there. As joining me on the show, we do have one of our good friends, Curtis Rogers, who does such amazing work over at 710 Seattle Sports, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I do want to get your thoughts as well on St. Mary's, because they have been the bane of the existence of Gonzaga over the last few years, a team that's consistently made the NCAA tournament. But as we know with St. Mary's, it is going to be a little bit new look for them as well. They do lose some of those pieces that made them so tick during the season last year. But how do you take a look at a bunch that they just did such a good job on glass last season? And though the backcourt is going to be a little bit of a question mark for them this year, we know that those guys down low, and Polias Marsukis, along with Harry Wetzels, and guys like this, they're going to be able to do a great job of pulling in balls off the glass. And we know that with St. Mary's, they always play the opposite of Gonzaga style, and usually they get their style in those games too.
Yeah, you bring up Moraskias. Got to watch him a little bit when he was at Arizona a couple of years ago, and he had always had the talent. I mean, I think he was a 4-star recruit coming over from Europe, just could not crack the rotation for Arizona because they just had so much talent on their roster. He goes over to St. Mary's. It turns into just incredible threat, scoring the ball last year. I really like what he is able to do. I think he is a huge piece to what St. Mary's is doing this season. And Mikey Lewis, he's going to be a really big player for them as well this year. I think they are absolutely a threat to win the WCC, even with Gonzaga being what they are. I think the Gales are just a team that you can never overlook in the WCC, even though they don't have as many conference titles as the Zags do. I think St. Mary's is going to be a really fun team to watch.
Yep, I think so as well. And then we have to talk about a team that's in your neck of the woods as well. That would be the Washington Huskies. And I do think that there's so much fun with this team as well, because for Washington, as we know, it was rough for year number one under Danny Sprinkle, but I really don't think that was on Danny Sprinkle whatsoever. It was on the fact that they paid Great Osobor, and then they paid Great Osobor, and then they didn't pay anyone else. But I take a look at this Washington team this season, being able to pair up a pair of guys from USC. Ironically enough, one guy that began his career over at Washington in Wesley Yates, along with Desmond Claude. I think that that's rock solid. Jacob Unsevich, who comes on over from Lipscomb, is solid, and I just feel like this is such a much more balanced roster. I don't know if Washington can ascend to be an upper half of the Big Ten team, but I feel like this is a bunch that they can be towards that middle of the Big Ten and perhaps return to the NCAA tournament if they pretty much do what Danny Sprinkle has been able to do every year except for last year.
Yeah, you mentioned how it's just a much more well-rounded roster this year. It's not just bringing over one guy who was the Mountain West Conference Player of the Year a couple of years ago. No, it's a much better-looking group this year. Wesley Yates is back with Washington after spending a year at USC. One guy to really maybe pay attention to is Hannes Steinbach, who is a German player, really opening a lot of eyes at the under-18 World Championships, going up against EJ Debanta from BYU, and was holding his own. I've seen a couple of mock drafts that have Steinbach in the first round, which is going to be a heck of a place for a Washington player to go. They haven't had a first-round pick since Jaden McDaniels and Isaiah Stewart back in 2020. So that's a name that could really, really influence things for the Huskies this season. I think for them, a successful year is getting back to the NCAA tournament. Now, can they do that? Yes. Will they? Remains to be seen. That Big Ten is going to be very treacherous this year, especially with teams like Purdue. You know, you've got teams like Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, they're all improving. So it's going to be tough for Washington to reach that upper echelon of the conference. But heck, if you can get to the NCAA tournament as an at-large team, that's going to be a huge, huge feather in the cap of Danny Sprinkle in year two, leading this Washington program.
Yep, no question about it. I think that it's going to be a good year for Washington. We'll see if it's a great year or not, but how about if we do dive in a little bit more on that topic as well? Who's a team or two that you think is flying a little bit under the radar right now that you're just feeling good about? It could be a team out there in the Big Ten. It could be a West Coast team. It could be any team. So there's just a team or two that over the last few weeks, you just, as you're evaluating them more and more, you're just feeling better and better about them for the upcoming season.
Well, I'm looking at in the Big Ten right now, and it does feel like there's going to be a much better season from UCLA this year. I think they're a team that obviously, when things go wrong, Mick Cronin is not somebody you want to be around. That is somebody that has, made it known that when things are bad, he is going to let his players know about it. But I think that what they've been able to do.
Don't make
season.
them travel too much.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't make them go to the East Coast. Don't make them go, much past the Pacific time zone. But I really like the portal pickup of Donovan Dent. I think that's a really good one. Xavier Booker's another one. It did lose a lot of guys, to the portal and also to the NBA, but this UCLA ball club is definitely worth paying attention to. And how about Oregon as well? Bringing back Nate Biddle. I thought that was a huge, huge win for them, especially considering all that they could have potentially lost this season. You bring him back. You bring back Jackson Shellstad. I mean, that is a really good inside-outside combo for that Oregon team that I think played above expectations last year, making it all the way to the second round of the NCAA tournament in their first season in the Big Ten. That they can definitely improve upon that. Dana Altman, it kind of feels like he's been rejuvenated a little bit, especially considering the success of this last season. There were a lot of years there, probably the last 3 or 4 years where Altman kind of would enter either retirement or take shots at his own athletic department. And now it just kind of feels like, all right, they've got something good going here in Eugene. So I would expect the Ducks to also be a team definitely worth watching in the Big Ten. I think they are primed for an NCAA tournament return.
Yep, I am right there with you. With Oregon, it was a little bit of a less than savory end of the season last year, so we're going to see if they're able to pick it up a little bit more. But a man that always has things picked up, a man that is always doing an amazing job of taking a look at this great game of college basketball. That'd be you, Curtis. You do a little bit of everything over there at 710 Seattle Sports. You're their 5-tool player, so let the good people at home know it's on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
We've got a lot going on. Obviously, still waiting on the NCAA to decide whether or not they're going to ruin the NCAA tournament by adding teams to the field of 68. We'll have reaction to that for sure when that happens. Hopefully they do the right thing and keep it at 68. Fingers crossed here, Greg. But yeah, we've got a lot going on at seattlesports.com, Seattle Sports on our YouTube page. You follow along on Twitter and Instagram at A Kid From Kent. Greg, always happy to hop on with you, no matter the season, to talk some college basketball with you.
No doubt about it. Curtis is one of the best in the business every single time he joins me with such amazing insight. So a big thanks to Curtis for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts.